There is a moment when a family stops protecting the story everyone else wants to sell, and according to this account, that moment came when Charles Spencer looked at a proposed Netflix project built around Diana and reportedly answered with 4 devastating words, "Is this a joke?" Because this was not simply a documentary proposal being rejected. This was a door being slammed shut on an entire narrative, and the person standing behind that door was Meghan Markle.
Your sister died in Paris that night. How alive in your memory is she now?
Very, and in so many...
From the moment she married Prince Charles in 1981, Princess Diana became the people's princess and was beloved all over the...
This is the hug going viral today. Prince Harry and Princess Diana's brother.
30th anniversary in 2027, so producers and directors and film crews are looking at how they...
Because of William, because he's done. The flashpoint centres on a proposed Netflix documentary series
using media in the same way that Princess Diana did. And I think that they believed that...
Tribute to your sister at the funeral. The fears you had then have not been realised.
I did inflict upon myself. I didn't like myself. I was ashamed that I couldn't cope with the pressures.
What did you... Princess Diana's brother is making rare claims about the night she died. 4 years after an internal investigation...
Meghan and Harry have an incredibly twisted obsession with Princess Diana, and it's...
Why would you pay for Prince Harry and Meghan that much money if you aren't getting a little piece of Princess Diana?
Netflix that coughed up this significant amount of money.
Ooh.
I think it's to save face.
But he will have to weigh up whether it is the right thing to do. But for him, for right things to do for his...
To be the case, I was looking directly at William and Harry across her coffin as I delivered it.
36 years old, in his groundbreaking memoir published in January, Harry recalled the emotional experience of bringing...
These people had terrible things happen to them, life-altering. It was numbing. I felt...
Bashir met Princess Diana through her brother, Earl Spencer.
Well, the irony is that I met Martin Bashir as to the broader picture of how something like this could have happened.
And what are they? Any of Harry and Meghan's other projects. The only value those two have are their royal connections.
Althorp House carries a silence that feels almost unnatural. A silence built from 5 centuries of Spencer history, private memories, portraits, corridors, and the place where Diana rests away from the machinery of the monarchy. And then, in the early months of 2026, that silence was allegedly shattered by a response that sent shockwaves far beyond England. Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer and Diana's brother, was suddenly at the center of a confrontation involving Netflix, Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and the most valuable piece of their public identity, Diana's memory. For years, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have built an American identity that remains deeply connected to Diana. Her story gives them emotional legitimacy, historical relevance, and a connection to the royal world even after leaving it behind. But there was one problem nobody could simply negotiate away. Charles Spencer controls access to Althorp, and Althorp contains something Netflix could never manufacture: the authentic private world of Diana.
Every day, people tell me what an inspiration she was, how much they miss her, what they did the day she died. It's extraordinary.
Charles Spencer is not a working royal. He does not stand on balconies, perform state duties, or appear every day inside the royal media machine. And that is precisely why his position matters. While the royal family controls the official institutional history surrounding Diana, Charles Spencer controls access to the family memory behind it. Diana rests on private Spencer land, and access to that world depends on permission. Archives, private material, and the atmosphere surrounding her final resting place cannot simply be demanded by a production company. And according to the source account, Charles Spencer had spent years watching Diana's suffering become increasingly packaged as entertainment. The pain, the interviews, the conflicts, the mythology, everything could be turned into another product. But the breaking point allegedly came when a major Netflix proposal sought to connect Diana's struggles directly with Meghan Markle's Martin experiences. By early 2026, the Sussex brand was already facing serious pressure. The Spotify relationship had collapsed publicly, publicly. American Riviera Orchard had failed to generate the expected momentum. Harry's projects were also struggling to create the cultural impact Netflix needed. The problem was becoming painfully obvious royal drama had been the engine, and that engine was losing fuel. Then came the opportunity that seemed almost too perfect. The 30th anniversary of Diana's death would arrive in 2027, guaranteeing enormous global attention. Netflix could build a prestige documentary series around Diana, while drawing parallels between the challenges Diana faced in the 1990s and the challenges Meghan Markle claimed to face in the modern era. Meghan Markle would not merely appear as Harry's wife. According to the proposal described in the source, she would become a central participant and guiding figure in the retelling of Diana's story. And that changed everything, because Netflix needed legitimacy. Not manufactured legitimacy, family legitimacy. They needed Althorp. They needed Charles Spencer. They wanted access to Althorp House, family archives, Diana's handwritten diaries, and private home movies that had never been publicly released.
Who told BBC that the funeral contained particular elements that reflected, quote, the affection with which the princess was held.
Imagine the value of that material. Not another recycled photograph, not another familiar interview, not another dramatic reconstruction. These would be private pieces of Diana's life that could transform an ordinary documentary into a global television event. But then Charles Spencer saw Meghan Markle's name attached to the project. And instead of negotiating, instead of asking for revisions, instead of opening a discussion, the response was reportedly immediate. Is this a joke? That sentence was tiny. The implications were enormous, because Charles Spencer was not merely rejecting a production. He was rejecting the idea that Diana's private legacy could automatically become the foundation for somebody else's narrative. And suddenly, the question became much darker. Was this really about a documentary, or was Charles Spencer finally drawing a line around Diana's memory? Because once that line was drawn, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were no longer simply asking for access to a famous family archive. They were asking the one person standing closest to Diana's private legacy to validate the story they wanted to tell. And this is where the story gets even more uncomfortable, because the rejection was not simply about a documentary. The deeper issue was the pattern Charles Spencer believed he was seeing. The jewelry, the carefully constructed imagery, and even the 2021 Oprah interview were presented as echoes of Diana's public story.
Diana's brother. All smiles, but the royal feud, still boiling.
Individually, each choice could be explained away. Together, however, they created a picture that Charles Spencer reportedly found deeply alarming. The question was no longer whether Diana was being remembered. The question was whether Diana's suffering was becoming a template for somebody else's narrative. And then came the detail that makes the entire veto feel even more explosive. The 1995 Panorama interview. That interview had later been exposed as having been secured through deception, involving forged bank statements and psychological manipulation by Martin Basher. Charles Spencer had introduced Diana to Martin Basher, believing he was helping his sister find a platform without knowing the methods being used. But the consequences remained. Diana had been vulnerable, isolated, and frightened, and the experience became one of the most troubling media chapters of her life. That history matters because it meant Charles Spencer was not looking at the Netflix proposal as an ordinary entertainment deal. He was looking at it through the memory of what happened when Diana's vulnerability entered the machinery of mass media. So when Charles Spencer allegedly saw a proposal built around Diana's suffering, commercialized for streaming audiences and connected to Meghan Markle's own story, the resemblance would have been impossible for him to ignore. The technology had changed, the platform had changed, but the basic equation in his eyes remained frighteningly familiar: find the wound, package the wound, sell the wound. And that is why the veto became something far larger than a simple refusal. What made the situation even more explosive was the suggestion of a growing relationship between the Spencer family and Kensington Palace. For years, everyone had focused on William and Harry, watching their relationship deteriorate while missing another possible shift taking place quietly in the background. William had long been protective of Diana's memory, while Charles Spencer had his own reason for guarding it. If the two were moving closer, the Netflix project suddenly faced a very different landscape. If Buckingham Palace itself had blocked the project, Harry and Meghan Markle could have portrayed the decision as another example of royal suppression. But if the refusal came from Diana's own brother, the entire argument changed. This could be framed not as institutional censorship, but as family protection, and that left Harry in an extraordinary position. Criticizing Charles Spencer could appear disrespectful toward his mother's family, while turning toward William was complicated by the enormous distance between them. The result was brutal. The people guarding Diana's legacy appeared to be speaking from one side, while Harry stood somewhere else. But the most valuable thing Charles Spencer withheld was not merely permission, it was the material itself. Diana's handwritten diaries and private home movies were described as the centerpiece capable of turning another Diana production into something genuinely new. Without them, Netflix would be left with familiar photographs, interviews, reconstructions, and stories audiences had already consumed. The exclusive material was the treasure, and Althorp was the vault. Without that vault opening, the entire strategy became dramatically weaker. The consequences then moved beyond England and into Hollywood. That is how the entertainment industry works when a major reputation takes a hit, rarely with a public announcement, but through silence. Invitations slow, calls take longer, enthusiasm changes, and suddenly one brutal comment from a member of Diana's family becomes something executives remember when evaluating future partnerships. The real question then emerges, and it is the question the Sussex camp would least want to confront: who are Meghan Markle and Harry without Diana? Their royal conflict created the tension. Diana kept that royal connection emotionally alive. Remove the palace drama, remove the institutional grievances, remove the Diana connection, and what remains must stand entirely on its own. That is the challenge now. Charles Spencer did not necessarily set out to destroy a media brand. The source frames his decision as something more personal, protecting Diana's memory from being consumed by the same appetite that had followed her throughout her life. In that interpretation, saying no was not an attack, it was a promise. And so Althorp remains closed, the private material remains private, and Diana's final story stays beyond the reach of another streaming strategy. The ghost of Diana has not disappeared. It never will. But the gatekeeper has made his position clear. The fallout, however, may only be beginning. Netflix conversations can continue. The Sussex brand can search for another direction. And whatever relationship exists between Althorp and Kensington Palace could carry consequences far beyond one rejected project. Because Charles Spencer did something powerful, he reminded everyone that Diana's name has guardians, boundaries, and family members who are still watching how that legacy is used. And now the question is no longer whether the door at Althorp closed. The question is whether Harry and Meghan can build what comes next without ever needing that door to open again.